the person is able to work in a legal status. He or she is able to contribute without having to worry about if somebody is going to come back and hit me or arrest me, or somebody is going to make life miserable for me. We are also looking at the fact that the person is able to enjoy the benefits that the local population has, the protection that the local population has, and we are able to discharge our duties effectively. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So when we talk about the legal status, we are talking about the valid work permits, the authorization to stay, the single versus multiple entries, and there are situations where people make a mistake of getting there. There are situations where we have seen a case where the person had a single entry work permit, some emergency happened, he came out of the country immediately, and without realizing that there is a single entry permit, he tried to get back into his workplace, and then he was stopped at the immigration portal. And this is where immigration's point. This is where some of these mistakes happen, and we need to make sure that the employee is aware of the single and multiple entries. Some of the, if you look at the countries that many of our people are traveling, the US, the UK, the Western nations, and even some of the countries down under Australia, New Zealand, there are progressive laws which have come into place. There are laws which are against discrimination in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of national origin. I'm taking some of these things which can immediately come up as points of discrimination, and these are well established. I remember a case where a person of Indian origin, and I was in the US, a person of Indian origin applied for a job at our organization, and we had this great automated tool where you just had to put in your resume, and the resume comes to the central point here in India. The check for the dual entry, duplicate entry, or somebody who's been through the process before is the single check for the date of birth. So one of my colleagues innocently called up the person in the middle of the night without realizing that he is in the US. He called up the candidate in the middle of the night to ask him about his date of birth. And guess what happened? The person was about 62 years old, applying for some IT administrator role, and we realized that he did not have the qualifications. We had to reject him. And the person put a case saying, you guys asked me my date of birth. You guys don't have any other reason to reject me apart from me being old. So it got into a mediation situation. We went up to a court and we actually paid him about $5,000 to settle the case. And the person also knew that there was no case for him. He just wanted to try it out. And the lawyer, the moment he saw that there was a question about date of birth, he immediately latched onto that and said, this is a place where they have made a mistake and this should not be done. The other things that we look at are most of the organizations today, as well as the countries that we travel to, have very strong positive work environment laws. So sexual harassment, any kind of gender bias, whether it's a man to man, or a man to woman, or a woman to woman, these are things which are completely controlled. There are enough avenues available for people to raise their grievances, and these are settled. And as a supervisor, many of us are aware that there are laws. As a supervisor, I am representing the organization, and my actions can be directly implicate the organization. Similarly, we also have wage limits. We have both the Minimum Wages Act applying in all the places, and we also have the upper wage limit, where you have, when I say upper wage limit, there are wage restrictions. You cannot send somebody at a particular salary band, even if you are able to get a person at a lower wage, willing to work at a lower wage. person is not exploited. Next slide. Cross-cultural sensitivity. This is another area which keeps coming up as a point of discontent. People working there realize that somebody has come in from a different culture, different nation, and then we figure out that there are many differences. Though as human beings we are very adaptable, we adapt to our new environment, but some of the basic habits linger on for a much longer duration. The kind of examples that I can look at are, we are fond of eating a lot of masalas. We are fond of eating curd rice. And when we go there, when we go to a different culture, we open the boxes and we share it in a common area, which creates a pungent smell, which creates a discomfort for people who are not used to this. And one has to be sensitive about these things. There are situations where we use words, and the way we mean the words and the way the words are used in the other culture could be very different. I remember a simple example where we use the word ASAP. The word ASAP in our context means that we drop everything else and we do it immediately. Whereas in the other culture, it means as soon as possible, as soon as humanly possible. So the other person takes his own sweet time or her own sweet time to complete the process because it is not immediate. But in my mind, when I say ASAP, it is immediate. One thing that keeps coming up is the hygiene and body odor and things like that. One is required to get used to that. And these are things that need to be built up based on the awareness, based on the finishing school programs or the immigration programs. Next. Many of these employees go into a different country and realize that internet services are available very easily. Internet is fast. They can get into any kind of sites and they can watch movies and listen to music and things like that. But some of us get into unwanted situations like pornographic sites. It reminds me of a simple statement that somebody made. 90% of the men in the world have visited pornographic sites or regular visitors of pornographic sites. The remaining 10% lie about it. So this is something that happens very frequently. Reminds me of an example where one of our guys was issued a laptop and by the client. He got the laptop and he was working on it, everything was fine. He came back to India for some time for some training program, finished that and went back. This is post 2001 and the laptop was screened at the immigration point and the guy was deported. So they told him that there is some pornographic material available, child pornography is there in that laptop and you've not been using your laptop properly. The guy was very convinced and he said, I have never been to this and anybody can check it out, I have never done this. Which is the usual excuse that everybody gives first. Right? So for some time there was such